Scientific research is often difficult to understand, especially if you are not a researcher in that particular area. Now we're going to walk you through one way that you could read a primary research study. So what I would recommend is that as you're first starting, I would look through the title of the article here and highlight any terms that you might be unfamiliar with. So you might do a quick Google search and find out that olfactory has to deal with the sense of smell. You might also find out the innate fasciculus is a part of the brain that's associated with registering memories. And so that you might have a better sense of like, okay, well, this has something to do with how different smell enrichments while people are sleeping, it might improve their memory in older adults. So after you've read through the title, you can then move on to the next section, which is the abstract. I recommend reading through the abstract at least a couple times to get a better sense of what the objectives were for the study, as well as what the key findings were. So after you've read through the abstract and have a basic overview of what this research study is all about, I would then recommend moving on to the introduction. This is where the authors are reviewing the literature that's already been conducted, the other research studies on this topic, and setting the stage for what they will be doing and why their research study is important. I like to go to the discussion section after the introduction because it will provide me with some interpretation to what the results actually mean. As you scroll through the discussion, you'll notice that there are other references to other studies, and this is where the authors are comparing their results to other research that's been conducted. This really highlights the fact that scholarship is this conversation, that authors are having this conversation with other research that's been conducted. There often will be a limitations section or things that are identified that would limit the interpretation of these results in certain circumstances. So for example, maybe there's a really small sample size that would make it harder to apply to the general population. In many research studies, there will also be a conclusion section which will occur after the discussion. Typically the conclusions will give you bigger picture overview, possible implications. In this particular research article, the conclusions are incorporated into this discussion section, so there's not a separate conclusion section. After I finished going through the discussion, that's where I would recommend jumping back up to the results section, where you can get more specific details of the actual results of this particular study. In this section, I wouldn't stress about understanding every specific detail, but I would look for the overall understanding of based off of what you understood from the discussion. Once you've gone through the results, then I would say you could jump to the methods section. I like going to the methods at the end because sometimes the specific details might not mean that much to you before you really understand what the results are and what the significance of the results are. In this tutorial, we provided you with one example of how you could read through a scientific research study. Don't hesitate to jump around the different sections of the article, reading it out of order. Again, don't feel like you have to understand every specific detail of the research article, but just try to find the key takeaways and the general understanding of what's happening in this article. Best of luck with your reading of scientific literature.